Bhagavad Gita, the three modes of material nature. So in the mode of goodness, one becomes conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. By it, one is bound to material fruitive actions. These actions cause karmic reactions and karmic actions and reactions. In the mode of goodness or the mode of darkness, the mode of ignorance or darkness is born of ignorance. It is delusion, resulting in madness, indolence, and sleep. The mode of goodness conditions one to happiness. The mode of passion conditions one to fruitive action. And the mode of ignorance conditions one to madness. When there is an increase in the mode of passion, the symptoms of great attachment, fruitive activity, intense endeavor, and uncontrollable desires and hankering develop. An increase in the mode of ignorance results in darkness, inertia, madness, and illusion. Action done in the mode of passion results in misery. Action done in the mode of ignorance results in foolishness. When one dies in the mode of ignorance, he takes birth in the animal kingdom, becomes an animal kingdom, or goes down to a lower species. From the mode of passion, greed develops. From the mode of ignorance comes foolishness, madness, and illusion. Those in the mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. So there's a nice verse in this chapter which describes how to transcend these modes of these modes of goodness of material nature. So this verse is 1426. Mam chayo vyabhyacharena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samite yeta brahma bhuyaya kalpata. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So we can very easily see that this these texts and the purport, well, the text especially, they're mainly dealing with the three modes of material nature. So I've got a little question, and it's I wonder why it says that one's conceptions of life are sometimes polluted by the passion of ignorance, when I should have thought that the pollution was fairly deep-rooted. But this chapter is entitled Instructions for Civilized Human Beings. So maybe if you're classed as a civilized human being, maybe the gunas don't bind quite so tight as somebody who's an ordinary conditioned soul, because that they're notably bound very tightly by the three modes of material nature, especially passion and ignorance. So when in the text it refers to goodness being a hindrance, this is because under the mode of goodness, one is conditioned by a sense of advanced happiness and knowledge. One feels better than others. That there's no likelihood of liberation. This liberation means to become free of the influence of the three gunas or ropes of material nature. So at the end of the purport, there's a little piece spoken by Lord Chaitanya. This comes right at the end of the purport. This is a very famous teaching taken from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is known as the Bhakti Lata Bicha, or the creeper of the seed of devotional service. One gets this seed by the mercy of a spiritual master, and one must regularly water this seed with unstinting devotional service. So we can very easily see that this part of this, especially this text and this purport of the Srimad Bhagavatam, isn't at all difficult to understand. It's it's dealing with a sort of basic level of spiritual understanding, the three modes of material nature. The three modes of material nature are discussed more fully in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, which is entitled The Three Modes of Material Nature. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that, this Bhagavatam is quite easy to understand because the texts get a little bit difficult. You can always refer to Prabhupada's purport, which makes everything sort of plain sailing on the spiritual path. Now, in the material world, everything isn't always quite so plain sailing. For example, if we refer to a conditioned soul in the material world, this means a person who's conditioned by the idea that this one life is the all in all. That when he dies, there's going to be no afterlife. There's going to be, when he dies, that's going to be the end of everything for him or her. So what I want to refer to now is that in the material world, sometimes things are really puzzling. For example, there's a famous Irish author, he wrote a masterpiece that was published about 1922. So this masterpiece, it deals with the subject of a day in Dublin in 1904. But it's a very long book, and it's quite puzzling in parts. But if you really endeavour, you can actually make sense of the book. And like I say, all the commentators on English literature class it as a masterpiece. But so taking that aside, you follow this masterpiece up with another book. The subject of this book concerns the dream of an Irish publican or Irish pub keeper. But but the book is notoriously difficult to understand. In fact, when I say it's difficult to understand, if you try and read it, you just won't be able to make head or sense of it. And so I actually heard about a group of people who were trying to read this book in California. So they worked their way through it for 16 years. At the end of these 16 years, they came to the conclusion that we can't understand what this book is about. We can't make head or tail of it. So there's obviously a warning here for people who are trying to study this book, and they may be wasting their time. Well, in fact, they are wasting their time to try and make sense of it. Whereas if you try and understand a book like the Bhagavad Gita or even the Srimad Bhagavatam, it hopefully should be plain sailing for you. Is quoted occasionally in Srila Prabhupada's purports. You notice he crops up in the Bhaktivedanta purports. So this quote is that if there is a glass of poison with some nectar in it, one should take out the nectar and leave the poison. If one finds gold in a filthy place, he should take it. You can take teachings even from one who was born in a lower grade family. And if a girl is very qualified or beautiful, even if she is born of a lower family, you can marry her. So this is interesting because, as I've said, Prabhupada quotes Jayaka Pandit in his purports. But this is especially interesting because of the sentence, you can take teachings even from one who was born in a lower grade family. So this is interesting and relevant because there was a big debate in the Vaishnava world. That debate was concerning whether a Brahmana, a caste Brahmana, is born by birthright or whether one can achieve it in his own lifetime. So Prabhupada was saying that one can be Brahmana even if one's not born in a Brahmin family, which at the time was quite controversial. because it opened up a big debate on the subject of Brahman, on the entitlement to Brahman. But yeah, we have to conclude that Prabhupada was right when he said that one can become a Brahmin even in this lifetime, because he had all the Shastric references to back his argument up. So when we're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, even spiritual affairs, we have a guideline called Sadhu Guru Shastra. If a thing is quoted in the Shastra, it's perceived to be correct. If a thing is backed up by the teachings of the Guru, it's perceived to be correct. And if the sadhus or the wise men also back this argument up, then it's perceived to be correct. Yeah, there's quite a few of Chanyakas Pandit's teachings that I know. So one that I quoted last time was that it's better to have one qualified son or disciple than hundreds of fools and rascals. So in this teaching, Chanyaka Pandit's talking about the sort of legitimacy of spiritual knowledge, how spiritual knowledge makes one better than a fool or rascal. Chanyaka Pandit also says this thing about the beginning of all wisdom is to regard other people's belongings as no better than the garbage thrown out in the street, to regard other people's wives as being your mother, and to treat others as you would like to be treated by them yourself, to treat others as you'd like to be treated by them yourself. Shri Shri Kotnitai Maya Posashe Ki Jai. So that's a really handy teaching, really, especially the end part about treating others as you'd like to be treated by them yourself. So there's also a little teaching by Chanyaka Pandit on the subject of the goddess of fortune, and this teaching goes where there is where a rascal is not worshipped, where there is no quarrel between man and wife, and where foodstuffs are always kept very carefully, there the goddess of fortune is always present. So this particular teaching is noteworthy because everybody's really crying out for the glance of the goddess of fortune, or Lakshmi Devi, as we sometimes call her, because basically the goddess of fortune is in charge of the goddess of fortune's glance is incredibly good, really, incredibly in organizing your finances. So it's generally perceived that there's there are two main energies or shaktis of Krishna: the internal potency and his external potency, or the internal energy and the external energy. So, from practical experience, we can see that this is actually true because the external energy is known as the Maya Shakti, or and the internal energy is known as the spiritual energy. So the spiritual energy, which is the internal potency, and there's the bewildering potency, which is the external energy. So that everybody is conditioned, the situation on the external energy of Krishna. So they're bewildered. But if one comes to Krishna consciousness and does a little, say, chanting, takes part in a kirtan, eats prasadam once or twice, or one gradually becomes situated on the internal potency or the spiritual potency. So to become situated on the internal potency is very auspicious. So from practical examples, we can relate how how we were before we came to Krishna consciousness and how we are after we come to Krishna consciousness. Because before I came to Krishna consciousness, I was confused, I was bewildered. But after I came to Krishna consciousness, I was blessed really. I was able to take control of my finances in a way that I wouldn't have thought was possible when I was before Krishna consciousness. So the human beings or the jivas, we're known as the marginal potency of Krishna because we can be either attracted to the internal energy or the external energy. But like I'm saying, nowadays, most of the conditioned souls will be situated on the external energy of Krishna, which is a shame because they're missing out on a great opportunity to develop the lives a little bit further. So there's also a stage that's relevant to people coming to Krishna consciousness. And this stage takes place when one's chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So when one's in this stage, you just can't get enough of chanting the mantra. It seems that every time you chant the mantra, you lift it a little bit higher and higher. You chant the mantra is absolutely everything. You're having such a great time chanting the mantra. You're getting deep spiritual realizations. You're having such a great time. And I was thinking, well, this must be a really difficult stage to attain. This must be a really elevated stage, but it's not really. You just have to have a little bit faith in the Maha Mantra and take part in a few what we call kirtans, or and if you ever attain this stage, you know what I'm talking about, because you feel really, really blessed, and you're getting such a deep realization about Krishna consciousness. So there's a phrase in Krishna consciousness which is decorations on a dead body. So this phrase is relevant because in Krishna consciousness, we believe that the soul or the jiva is inside the body, and the soul is the most important part of the body. And when the body dies, the soul is no longer present in the body. So this phrase, decorations on a dead body, it comes from the custom of decorating a body after its death. But in Krishna consciousness, we're saying that decorations on a dead body are a waste of time, because the most important part of the body is the soul or the jiva. This part of the body carries on after death. So Srila Prabhupada also spoke about how there should be spiritual solutions to material problems. So this is also a very true statement, that there should be spiritual solutions to material problems, because obviously there are many material problems in life today, and some of these problems can be best solved by a spiritual solution. And unfortunately, the politicians today, that they don't have access to the spiritual solutions. So I'm thinking of a practical example of when I managed to use a spiritual solution to solve a material problem. Because about 12 years ago, I was in Leeds. I was about to be faced with a very big problem, and that problem was could I really go about my day-to-day life and carry on the way I was accustomed to when I was signing on and being faced with being put onto what they call universal credit. I wasn't really fancy going on to universal credit very much. I mean, okay, it was my own fault because I was having difficulty in finding jobs. I've been taking unemployment for a long time. Some of these times I was lazy, often I was misguided. But all the same, I was going to be faced with an almighty material problem. How would I be able to make it on universal credit? Because anybody who's ever signed on to universal credit will know that it's quite strict. And I thought, if I carry on in Leeds on universal credit, I'm not going to be able to have such a good time. But I was able to find a spiritual solution to this problem, in that I was able to take up Krishna consciousness more fully. I was able to move to Karuna Bhavan in Scotland. I've been here for 8 years now as a full-time devotee, and it's obviously solved at least one material problem. So this is relevant because if I'd stayed in Leeds and just signed on universal credit, I would have been able to survive the pandemic. I might have caught coronavirus and been very ill, or even died. But luckily, through being here through the pandemic, I was able to be well insulated and well kept away from any sort of anybody who was any chance of being passed on to any chance of contacting coronavirus, which I say it could be quite a nasty thing. Obviously, yeah. So this is a statement of Prabhupada's from. It's taken from a section of the Bhagavad Gita, section 13:8 to 12, in which Prabhupada is talking about there's various higher qualities which are associated with spiritual being, with spiritual development, really. So one of these qualities is called tolerance. So this is an exact quote from Srila Prabhupada. Tolerance means that one should be practiced to bear insult and dishonor from others. If one is engaged in the advancement of spiritual knowledge, there will be so many insults and much dishonor from others. So I've included this in my little talk this morning because it's something that I've always remembered. So in this section of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's really telling how things exactly are when you take up Krishna consciousness or the spiritual path. So I'll just go on to a slightly different subject here. So it's I used to be a fan of various kinds of music. I used to be a reggae fan. I still am a fan of reggae, but I've mentioned this because there's a particular sloka or verse which is relevant to this being a reggae fan. And that's Sarvapadi Vina Muktam Tapravatena Nimalam Rishikena Rishikesh Savanam Bhakti Uchite. So this sloka or this verse, especially the purport of this, or the meaning of this verse, is that if one engaged one's senses in devotional service to Krishna, who is the master of the senses, one's senses gradually become purified, and one loses one's material designations. So my material designation is that I used to be a reggae fan, but since practicing Krishna consciousness, I'm much less of a reggae fan than I used to be. So my senses are gradually becoming purified as well by engaging in this Krishna consciousness vehicle. So this sloka that I've just quoted is relevant because it's showing how the path of Krishna consciousness is basically a very scientific process. It's very well documented and written about, and it actually bears up to some careful examination. So because I'm on the path of Krishna consciousness, my senses are becoming purified and my material designations are becoming lessened. Now this is relevant because No, I can't think of anything, so I'll go on to the next section. So I've got a little story about difficulties. Difficulties, we're often faced with difficulties in our everyday life. In fact, sometimes the difficulties get so much they really take us over, and all we can see is difficulties. So this story about difficulties goes that one day in the classroom, the teacher set a challenge to the class. And this challenge was to write on this sheet of blank paper. Except this sheet of paper wasn't like an ordinary sheet of paper. There was a little black dot in the middle of the paper. So the class went away and did their writing about this piece of paper on the piece of paper. But every one of them was noticing the black dot in the middle of the page. And they all wrote about in their essay. They'd write things like, there's a black dot in the middle of the page and I'm not sure why it's there, and it really is a puzzle to me why it's there at all. And others would say stuff like, yeah, there's a black dot in the middle of the page, and this black dot is really engaging my consciousness. It's really sort of freaking me out how there's a black dot in the middle of the page. So the teacher collected all the essays that the class had written. And he noticed that there's all written about the black dot in the middle of the page. So this story is relevant because this black in the middle of the page, it represents difficulties. So what the class were doing in writing about the black dot in the middle of the page, they were noticing the difficulties. Because when you have difficulties, the trick is to relegate them, is to sort of is to write on the white section of the page. So when we have difficulties, the trick is not to be taken over by them. Is to sort of relegate them in our consciousness, so that we can carry on with our everyday tasks and our everyday jobs and everything else we have to do, all our cause and all the things that go up to make a day in Krishna consciousness. We have to relegate our difficulties so that we don't get transfixed with them or know them too much. You know, we can do this by writing out positive thoughts on the paper that's white. So I hope I made everything clear there. It's a little bit puzzling sometimes, but so I just want to finish off with this thought. So the Dalai Lama was 90 yesterday. So the Dalai Lama says that he can reincarnate himself into another human body. When he dies, he's going on into another human body. He says that he can choose who. So that's a little bit controversial, but I'll finish my little lecture, my little class with that section. If anyone's got any questions or comments, they can ask me, and I'll try and answer them as best I can.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. Can you expand more on what benefits one can get who takes up Krishna consciousness? What kind of benefits we can get?
Well, so like I was saying about the glance of Lakshmi Devi, or the goddess of fortune. Before I came to Krishna consciousness, I used to look at money as not being precious. I used to spend it as soon as I got it, and I always had a big list of things to spend my money on. But once I came to Krishna consciousness, I was able to take hold of my finances in a way that I wasn't expecting to, really, that I could never have predicted. I was able to make savings, and I was able to have just a good time I was having before. So that's one benefit of Krishna consciousness. So, like I say, everything is regulated in Krishna consciousness. Everything is pointing one towards the mode of goodness. Because, like I say, there's three modes of material nature. And often in the conditioned stage of life, one will be in either passion or ignorance, or a mixture of passion and ignorance. But this isn't a good situation, because there's the higher qualities of the human being. In passion and ignorance, these aren't apparent to the person who's under the modes at all. So one benefit of Krishna consciousness is that one gets pointed in the path of the higher human qualities. So in the actual verse it says, one's conceptions of life are sometimes polluted by passion and ignorance, which are exhibited by attachment, hostility, greed. So greed's a quality of the passion, of the quality of the mode of passion, especially. So lamentation is also a quality associated with the mode of passion. Illusions exhibited mainly under the passion, under the mode of ignorance. So madness is also a big component of the passion, of the mode of ignorance. So false prestige, that's comes under passion. Insults, that comes under the mode of ignorance. Fault finding, deception, envy, intolerance, bewilderment's a big component of the mode of ignorance. Hunger and sleep. So sleep's also a big component of the mode of ignorance. So if you can stand to be ruled by sort of sleep, madness, envy, intolerance, madness, you're welcome to the mode of ignorance. But the mode of ignorance is very low. If one dies under the mode of ignorance, one goes down to the animal kingdom, which is the greatest fear. So if anybody's got any more questions or comments.
You mentioned reincarnation, some of the examples in the modern day that people have experienced, so we can not just the Shastric evidence from real life stories. Remember the past life and you have stories.
I'm afraid not. No, but I've not made a really big study of the subject. But there's one that's especially mentioned in the Vedas. There's a book, Vedas. It concerns a little girl who was in India, and she could remember lots of details about her past life. And so they went to the actual family that she was saying she was originally from, and they checked out all the details that this little girl was coming up with, and they found that they matched up exactly. And there's many other stories that also have the sort of same features, that basically somebody can remember details of the past life that they just wouldn't be able to remember otherwise. So yeah. But I mentioned about the Dalai Lama because I thought it was is he absolutely correct in saying that he can take reincarnation, be born into the body of another person? Because in Krishna consciousness, we wouldn't say such a thing really. We'd because we're all conscious of the higher powers, the gods. So we wouldn't try to do God's work for them. We'd say that's God, and leave him alone. But, so if nobody's else got any comments or questions, I'll close here. So Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, jai Sri Mahaparana ki jai, Sri Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Shri Kodnitai Mayapur Sashe ki jai.